Hello everyone and welcome along to another edition of Weekend Winners. Great to have your company. I'm Damien Seaton. I'm usually joined by co-host Luke Bowden. However, Luke is in Vietnam on holidays. He's holidaying with the money that he won with the cleaner last weekend. So well done to Luke. Good to see him get a winner. However, I am joined this week by Tasmanian harness racing historian Peter Cooley. How are you, Pete? Great to have your company.
Very good, thanks, Damien.
Right, well, I'll quickly just go through some best bets for the weekend, and Peter, after that we'll just have a bit of a chat about a few of the races, the feature races coming up, including the 2-year-old feature races. So we'll run through the best bets for the card at Moonee Valley tomorrow. There are two best bets. Race 5, number 1, Mr. O'Kieran. Stephen Arnold to ride. Rises slightly in weight, only half a kilo, but Stephen Arnold is possibly one of the best jockeys, heavyweight jockeys in the country, and I'm certain that Mr. O'Kieran can overcome that slight increase in weight. He ran a fortnight ago, same track and distance. He bolted in, and a duplicate performance would see him win on Saturday as well. It looks like he'll sit second. He'll sit just off the speed, and he should be very hard to beat in the run of the judge. A short quote, however, 185 with Tatsbet at the moment, but any price a winner. Race 7, number 3, Black and Tough, the Tasmanian mare's going across to Victoria to make her debut. Craig Newitt will ride for his old boss, Leon Wells, and she's coming off a terrific win at Sprayton only a fortnight ago when sitting off the very speedy Aranzano and proved too strong. Now, there's a plethora of speed in the race. I envisage her getting back to 6th or 7th. However, she should have plenty to offer at the finish. Race 7, number 3, Black and Tough, and Tatsbet have her at $7. She's a genuine each-way chance and a certain podium finish for mine. Now, best at Morfordville, we stick with another Tasmanian race. 1, number 1, Rich O'Man, wasn't disgraced when finishing second at his second start in South Australia. Tatsbet have him at $3.50. The favourite, Mr. Lowndes, at $1.70. Most recent start, Rich O'Man did beat Mr. Lowndes home, and I can see that happening again. And I think come start time there'll be a little less between that pair as far as the odds are concerned. So I think Rich O'Man will shorten up from the 350 quote. It's the best at Morfordville, race 1, number 1. We have two good things at Launceston Harness on Sunday night. Race 1, number 3, Wide Take Time, looks perfectly drawn. It'll push forward and perhaps take the lead and be very hard to run down. And in race 7, number 6, Pachacuti, that's my best as well. Race 1, number 3, race 7, number 6. Peter, we'll get a best bet from you as well for the card at Launceston on Sunday.
Well, Damien, I was very impressed with How Come Why Not at his first run in the state last Sunday in Hobart. He took off from the back of the field before the bell, for a lap from home, and he worked very hard outside the leader for the rest of the race and still battled on just to get beat. And he's got a better draw this week, so I thought he'd win.
Okay, so that's race 8, number 7. We've got some terrific features coming up over the next fortnight or so. We've got the Bandbox coming up in the Globe Derby. That's on Sunday for the fillies and the colts and geldings. And the following week, the Avicus and also the Dandy Patch. Let's have a quick chat, Peter. You've been following harness racing here in the state for how long?
Well, all my life. The earliest race meeting I can remember going to was the 1944 Easter Cup at Elphin.
So 60 years ago almost.
No, it's longer than 60. It's nearly 70 years.
Well, it is too, yes. How time goes.
Dad had a mare with some chimes in it, and I can remember going up. I can't remember much more about the race, but I remember being there, and she ran about 5th, I think.
And you've been going to the races basically ever since?
Ever since,
yep.
Yeah.
Right, well, let's have a chat about Bandbox. Who was Bandbox?
Bandbox was a mare bred in Tasmania in the early 40s. She won 28 races, including the 1947 Inter-Dominion in Western Australia. She also won 6 races at Adelaide, including the Christmas Cup from 48 behind. She was a tough mare, and although her foals didn't amount to much, one of her daughters produced Pure Steel, perhaps one of the greatest horses Australia's ever seen. Interesting thing about Bandbox, how they used to race them in those days. Her first start in the race was at Sprayton. She won 2 races during the afternoon, and they saddled her up for the 3rd race, but she couldn't win and second from 72 behind, or 60 metres. She was a mighty mare.
Okay, what about Globe Derby?
Globe Derby was leading sire in Australia from about 1925 till well into the 40s. He was bought by Igor Tatlow for his first stallion at Derby Lodge at Hagley in 1928. He bought him for the low price of 450 guineas. Igor told me he thought he'd spend more than treble that on him. He proved a great sire. He sired Vicus. Bandbox's sire, Van Derby, was another one of his good sons. He sired Logan Derby. He sired Springfield Globe that won the Dominion in Launceston in 39, and also his full brother, Our Globe, who was one of the most sensational things in an Dominion. Our Globe won the first two his heats, and on the third heat, the horse got disqualified for 6 months because the stewards reckon he didn't try. So he missed out running in the final, but his full brother won the final.
It would have been hard to beat, obviously, in the final.
They were all Globe Derby horses.
The Avicus, which is coming up in a fortnight's time, or Sunday week rather, and Dandy Patch. Firstly, Avicus.
Avicus won the Tasmanian Derby in 1933, and she was still winning races at the age of 17. The first Dominion in Western Australia in 1936, the two standout horses in there were two Globe Derbies, Avicus and Logan Derby. The Dominion that time was on a point system, and you got so many points for fastest time. Logan Derby went through the series undefeated, but Avicus, because she had to give him 20 metre start, she earned the most points, so she was declared the champion. But then, in a twist of fate, in 1940, Logan Derby was the back marker, and he didn't win the final, but he accrued the most points, and he was given the championship. But after that, it came back to what it is now, just the final race.
Okay. Yeah. And Dandy Patch?
Dandy Patch was bought by a bloke named Peters at Deloraine from the Melbourne Yearling Sales in 1911. He proved easily the best horse in the staple he was racing. I think one of his best runs was in I think it was the 1920 or 21 Easter Cup, when he got beaten a yard coming from 210 yards behind, which would be about 180 odd metres, I think. Yep. Then he proved a very, very successful sire. Well, see, Bandbox was out of one of his daughters. Diamond Globe, that was one of the idols of early night trotting in Melbourne, was out of another one of his daughters. He was a great sire and a great racehorse.
Those sort of marks, so you're talking about 210 yards, we just don't see that these days in our stand-start races interstate.
No, because I think the horses now are more even than what they were in those days.
Okay. Yeah. Now, best Tasmanian pacer you've seen, Peter?
Well, I'm always a Golden Alley fan. Mm-hmm. Because I think he done things that were impossible to do, but he'd do them, if you know what I mean. And at one stage he held track records in Adelaide, Melbourne and Sydney all at the same time.
Unheard of these days, basically.
Yeah, and he proved a good sire. The best horse Tasmania ever produced, I think it was Logan Derby, but he was a bit before my time.
Bit before your time, was he?
Before my time.
Can't quite remember that one.
No, Logan Derby, no.
We haven't got a lot of time, Peter, but tell us about the story about a trotter who trotted from Avoca here in Tasmania to Fingal and did it in record time, and the gentleman that had this particular horse made quite a few bob.
Yes, well, I found that in an old newspaper. A man arrived riding a trotting mare at Fingal, and he had £100 with him, and he's prepared to put the £100 on that his mare could trot between the two towns, Avoca and Fingal, under the hour. And of course, when you think that time, if you're earning £2 a week or £1 a week, you were going all right. £100 was a lot of money. And
so a year's wages, basically.
Yeah, of course he found enough people would cover that, because it was a pretty big effort to do. And she trotted the distance in 58 minutes, which, when you think what the roads were like in that day, that's under the 4-minute mile all the way. And it was, I don't know whatever happened to her. She was never named or anything like that, and he just disappeared again.
And the start of the
they
had to go
yeah.
forward.
Well,
bring it back.
when he arrived, he said it was 15 mile, but the local says no, it's not quite. You've got to start a bit out of town because it's 150 yards short of the.
And again, you just wouldn't see these sort of things happening these days.
No, but in that days you saw there a lot of that. A lot of horses that just, people would match one another on the roads, or they'd say my horse can trot 6 miles at a certain time and that sort of thing.
Right, just a couple of points here too, Peter. Harness Racing New South Wales announced during the week that they reduced the amount it costs a trader driver for a licence, $400 a week they're paying. I've had it made to my attention that it's $434 here in Tasmania, so it's more to register as a licensed trainer driver in Tasmania than it is in New South Wales, and yet we have up to 10 meetings a week in New South Wales, and in Tasmania only a couple of meetings as well. And it was also mentioned too about the cost of insurance to insure the industry here in Tasmania, and there are quite a few people believe that we can save a lot of money by getting a second quote on our insurance. And another thing to mention too, to stand a stallion in Tasmania, it costs quite a few dollars.
To register a stallion to stand in Tasmania is $750, which is $185 more than Victoria. So it doesn't affect the persons that say gets 50 mares, but someone that gets 2 or 3 mares, it's a big amount of money to find when you're only standing the stallion, say it's $700 or $800, and I can't see why we should have to pay even as much as Victoria.
Mm. So it's probably a couple of issues they need to address here, I guess.
Yes, yeah, and as far as I know, the harness racing insurance is Australian-wide policy controlled by the Harness Racing Australia. I know years ago when we put the running rail, took the running rail down and just put the pegs, the insurance premium dropped by over half because they thought the risk of men was nowhere near as bad then as what it was when there was a running rail which they could run into, and that's been proved correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's probably a few issues there that we need to look at as far as harness racing is concerned here in Tasmania. Peter, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, David.
And thanks for making your second appearance in
Yes.
50 years plus.
Thank you.
Good on you, Peter. One of the great characters of racing here in Tasmania, Peter Cooley. And don't forget, folks, the more they win, the better the price.